And we're going to talk about AI. What is AI anyway? This is presented by Otis at our Lunch and Learn schedule. I'm Don Wolff, Chief Technology Officer. We're going to go from there. So today's agenda, we're going to do an introduction into AI in general. Then we're going to go a little bit deeper into what ChatGPT is, Portland Public Schools' position on ChatGPT, and a little bit around AI in general, AI in the education of the workforce, and then some resources for further learning, as well as some helpful links for Otis in general. So, little disclaimer, this is a new topic. AI is a rapidly evolving technology. We've seen it explode from about a year ago with the release of ChatGPT. Not going to have all the answers today. We're not even going to have some of the answers today, but it's a place to enter into the conversation, to raise questions, to raise concerns. It's a very deep topic to have conversation around. So hopefully this will pique some of that and give us an informed place to work from. So that in mind, please be respectful of everybody and differing opinions and differing levels of understanding and experience with where we're at right now. So to start this off, I'm going to launch a poll here, just trying to get a understanding of where people's familiarity with ChatGPT in particular is. But if you want to apply that to other generative AI, that's just fine. No. So we're doing that. I know there's more than 3 people here. Superintendent's enjoying, so it's very exciting. We're looking for your familiarity with ChatGPT. We're just taking a poll. I just launched it. For those that continue to join us, this is recorded for later use, so just so you're aware. So from the responses, look like we've used these tools, not sure how to best use them. I have heard and seen it, but I've heard about it but never seen it. So we're going to jump right in and go on. So the first thing I want to do, and I don't normally do this in a presentation, but I want to play in a 2.5-minute video for you. So I'm going to hopefully get positive feedback. Derek Brown, I can see you. So if you give me a thumbs up, if the audio is here when it starts, when I play it, 2.5 minutes just to give us a quick, brief background. Whoop, my apologies. It needs to play for me. All right, since I'm getting feedback that we're not hearing it, I'm going to pause it. It is embedded in the slide deck, so you can get it there. I will encourage you to go take a look at it. It is a short watch, but it gives a pretty good high-level brief overview of what AI is. And just to give you some context. So we're going to get past that. So just a quick definition between AI and generative AI. They're very different things. AI, artificial intelligence, it's just a computer program or application that can perform human-like tasks or that perform tasks with human-like intelligence. It appears that they're doing things for us, making decisions, that sort of thing based on a predefined set of information that's got. Generative AI is a type of AI that is designed to create content, whether it's pictures or writing or outlines or presentations, that sort of thing. So that's kind of at a baseline, the difference between AI and generative AI. ChatGPT is a generative AI model. So what are some examples of AI? Currently right now, because it's here, we're using it all the time. Emails being marked as important. Gmail's got a great section for that. Recognizing faces on social media or in your photo albums. chatbots, Netflix, and other streaming companies giving you recommendations, language translation apps. These are all great examples of artificial intelligence where something has been coded to look at things, compare them, and provide a recommendation or the next set of words or that sort of thing. Makes it repetitive tasks easy, helps predictive, get you going. So what about in education? What are some tools of AI that are already in our buildings, are already in our schools? Text editors and autocorrects. I know a lot of folks use Grammarly, Read and Write, or Microsoft Word, Google Docs, those predictive autofills. Those are all AI generated OCR from things like Orbit Notes or Microsoft Lens or Google Keep. Creating images from text, Canva has recently released this. Image or DALL-E are both AI engines, generative AI engines that have that, as well as Google Voice Typing, Zoom, Google Meet with our auto captioning that is happening right now. So there's lots of examples of AI already being here. So, okay, that said, what is ChatGPT? Because it was the first example of a generative large language model that was made available to the masses. So ChatGPT by OpenAI is an example of generative AI. It's designed, its entire intent is to create content like pictures or writing. Uses large language model, which is a massive collection of information that it trains against, that it asks question of, it goes and gets responses and comes back and tests those responses against the humans interacting with them, where they provide more input to get the content that the humans want. So humans type in a prompt, responds using text or code or providing an image, that sort of thing. ChatGPT 3 has limitations. It's the free version, and I believe it's version 3.5. It only has access to a limited set of data up into September of 2021. They have released the current version of ChatGPT 4, which has access to the entire internet, but it requires a paid subscription. It's currently $20 a month if you want to use that, and it's going to give you much broader return sets or creations of things you pull. So keep that in mind. Wanted to share a few examples of ChatGPT for people that haven't seen it. I asked it to explain how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to a 5-year-old. This was one of my favorite lessons when I was teaching 4th grade, having students express their writing. It does a pretty good job, although if you look at it, spread peanut butter on one slice out, is spread peanut butter all over. It's not very specific, but it does a pretty good job giving us some pretty straightforward directions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Next, I asked it to compose a 6-sentence description that compares the movie franchises Harry Potter and Star Wars. This might be a little hard to read just on your screen here, and I am not going to read it to you, but it does a pretty good synopsis. You know, my only disappointment is that it doesn't acknowledge that Harry Potter is a direct ripoff of Star Wars, which I'm a big fan of both franchises, but Harry Potter is just Star Wars with bad lightsabers. For useful things, if you don't want to create writing, I asked it to give me a 12-hour itinerary of 12 hours in Boston, 12 hours in Portland Public School in Portland, Oregon, if I'm only traveling by foot and not using any car or public transportation. This doesn't give me the whole thing, but it gave me a full 12-hour itinerary. Start at Pioneer Courthouse. Everything here looks pretty accurate. No hallucinations. Very useful when traveling to a new city. I tried it when I had a trip back to New York and I was there, and I didn't like the itinerary it gave me, but it gave me a pretty robust itinerary. Another example, creativity. Asked it to create a short poem about baseball geared towards adults and young adults. Wrote a lovely little poem here. And then I asked it to update it. So there is interactive. It will remember what you have asked it previously, and it will update that information. So I asked it to update the poem to make it more mysterious, and it kind of did. I thought I would get more of a Halloween theme to it with the bats and all of that, but it is responsive. It does show a level of cognition that you can get a response. And so prompt engineering is going to become a bigger thing for us. So what I was going to do is take us to a demo of ChatGPT, and I just needed to go right here. One of the things I'm going to say, we have recommendations of using personal accounts, not our PPS accounts right now. It's too easy, and we'll talk about that a little bit more on PPS's stance with this, but I'm just going to log in with my Google account, maybe, and just come up with a couple of prompts on the fly for those people that haven't seen them. Won't spend a huge amount of time here. If you've got a prompt you would love to see written, that's great. I've used these a whole bunch more. And maybe I'll just pull up one that was relative for the classroom. So I asked it yesterday, where is that one? And I'll just type it in again here. Create for me an outline of a unit of the Oregon Trail for 4th grade students. And as you see, it will start chugging away and just start giving me an overall outline of a unit that I could have. Now, I could have time bound it, which maybe I will go back and update it. But it gives me a great place to start if I'm not sure what I'm doing. As a first-year teacher, I would have loved this because the Oregon Trail was one of my units of study that I had to do, and I poured through books to try and come up with this, and this would have given me a great place to start. Another one that I played around with was write me an email to my boss requesting a raise. And it will come back and it will provide you a reasonable expectation. Now, AI is only good as the data set that it's working against, and this is a limited data set. This is ChatGPT 3 point whatever it is. So it's got a limited data set. It can't reference what current salary rates are or things like that. It also doesn't know who I am very much right now either. But it's pretty quick, and this is not the paid version, so the paid versions are even much faster. It's becoming very adept at what it does. Anything else you want to see? I am going to do one more thing. I wasn't sure I was going to do this. There are a number of generative AI and chatbots out there. There's a massive amount of tools. The two most popular might be our ChatGPT, which everybody knows about, and Bard. If you've got a Gmail account, you've got access to their experimental Bard prompts. One of the things I asked it to do that I thought was interesting was, and I will do it on ChatGPT first, write a biography of Don Wolff. I'm going to copy that, so I enter the exact same prompt here in a second. And ChatGPT will tell me, sorry, I don't know enough about this guy. He's not a person of interest or of enough renown that I can't do that. But Bard, which is connected with my personal Gmail account, if I paste the same thing in here, it will actually provide a reasonable, if it's going to work for us here. Oh, so today it's telling me I can't help with that. The other day when I did this, it actually gave me, it looked through my Google Drive, found out my history. It looked on the, because Bard has access to the public web, it knew that I worked at Portland Public Schools and addressed that. So a good lesson learned is that it may not always be active, or it may not provide the results you're hoping for. Don't always count on it to do what you want it to do when you need it to do. So I've created a whiteboard, and I'm going to paste the link directly to this whiteboard here. I'm just looking for future input based on a little bit of knowledge right now that we've shared. How are you seeing generative AI being used in schools or in the workplace currently? Or are you seeing it being used in any of our buildings? Let me get back over to where, so I'll give you the link there. I'm going to give you a minute to work on that and be thinking about that. And if you're not familiar with how to use a Jamboard, over here on the left, this fourth icon down is a sticky note. Hit a sticky note in there, and you type away and leave a sticky note on here. Lesson planning, email replies, letters of recommendation, all good. Back to our presentation here. So if, as I strike you, would love to keep haven't seen it used yet. We're working on that. We have to be careful. We'll talk more about why we have to be careful here momentarily. So what are some examples of what ChatGPT can write? And these might be helpful in everyday life for you right now. Email summaries, quiz questions. If you put a topic in there, poem, we saw an example of that. Titles, headlines, resumes, shopping list, code. We know that some of our folks in Otis have either refined or had code created from scratch that they refine from the human standpoint, translations, bibliographies. This is a good place to talk about hallucinations in AI. Sorry, I'm going to go back. And a hallucination is when an AI doesn't have enough information or doesn't know an answer, it will make stuff up. So a bibliography might not be accurate, or a lesson plan might not be accurate. It still requires your expertise and your deep knowledge of subject matter expertise to go back through anything that you have asked a generative AI model to produce for you to verify that it is true, that it is accurate, that it is valuable for you to use. But as you saw, I mean, if you want a quick idea, it's a great way to at least start that brainstorming. The hardest part for me in creation is that blank page. Having an outline created for me that I can work from and tweak has been very valuable for me. So how can we use this in the classroom? What could be some potential positive uses? Again, I will point out very clearly here, and I'm going to hit this a little bit more in depth in a slide in just a second, but ChatGPT is only available, you can only create an account, or you're only supposed to, there are terms of use saying if you're 18 years or older. Students 13 to 17 can get that if they have their parents' permission. So students shouldn't be interacting. Our students, Portland Public School students, shouldn't be being directed to go to ChatGPT, create an account, and start using it. But teacher guided could have students critically analyze a ChatGPT response for a question or for a prompt. Students could create prompts and compare responses. How do I get different information out of the model? Discussing the impact of new technology on society. What does this mean for ownership? And when I have it create a poem, is that poem my poem that we had it create around baseball, or is that ChatGPT's? If I prompt engineer it enough to change the response, does that make it mine? Where does that fit in? There's a lot of unanswered questions that we can go on. And thank you, Melissa, for providing the educator FAQ on OpenAI. Can practice debating by having a conversation with ChatGPT. Which arguments fail, which arguments work or resonate. Sentence starters or starter texts that have students edit and modify the text. Receive feedback on writing a draft. Disclaimer here, and something to be aware of, anything you put into that prompt and hit return and load, ChatGPT owns that now. They collect it, it becomes part of their model. So private information, names, phone numbers, PII, anything that is personally identifiable should not be put in, particularly a free version or anything that's not contracted to ensure privacy. So again, this is emerging technologies, and we're working on what are our guidelines that we're going to be putting around generative AI in the district and in society in general, and how do we utilize that, and how do we ensure the privacy and security of our data and our students and our staff's data within that. So when you write a lovely dissertation for your doctoral thesis and you want feedback from generative AI, if you put it in ChatGPT, you've just handed over your doctoral thesis, and they now have access to that forever, because they copy it and they keep it. So it's things we need to be aware of, which this is what this screen here is all about. What are some concerns? Privacy. I haven't seen a language an AI model that is open to anybody under 13, and most of them almost exclusively require in their terms of service that you be 18 years or older. Plagiarism and copyright are a huge issue. We know, we've all heard stories about students completing all of their work by just running it through ChatGPT or having it proofread. That's okay if our instruction can be defeated through the use of AI. Maybe we should be asking different questions or asking for different activities from our student. How do we leverage ChatGPT to get the most out of our students so that they can build upon knowledge and not focus on some elements? If the focus isn't on grammar, but on content, all right, how do we use that to spur the imagination and the creativity of our students and teach grammar and spelling and other mechanics of language in a different way? Ethics, there's no credit for creators. There's a mixture of many people's work. So when we get into this, when we go back through and pull information out of this, this is my biggest concern right now, is the bias and misinformation. All AI models are built by humans. Humans implicitly have bias because we've all grown up with different experiences, and that bias is going to come out in every algorithm that's gone and been created into some sort of AI model. So how do we check for that? How do we make sure that the model we're using doesn't have an implicit bias or isn't creating bias in the output it's providing? Things we have to find ways to check for and be looking for and be conscious of in all of the time that we're using this. Algorithmic bias, because the algorithms, again, are created by humans. Even the algorithms that are now being generated by AI fall back to human-generated algorithms. How do we make sure that those prejudices are removed? How do we make sure that the algorithm is not targeting a specific population of people or demographics of folks? We have enough of that here. It's things we have to consider when we're adopting AI models, particularly here in our schools, where our focus is on removing that systemic bias and that systemic racism in the foundational tenets of our society. So let's not be adding to this. Those are huge concerns around as we push forward. So we're not rushing into making sure everything has an AI component, even though all of our vendors are, even though you can't turn around without seeing a product that is touting the great use of artificial intelligence. And this is going to be the great equalizer, the great saver. It has great potential, but it has to be used responsibly, and we have to know what those guardrails are that we're going to operate within. This is a source from Common Sense Media. There's lots of other ones out there if you do a little bit of looking, and we'll do this. So just ChatGPT is the one everybody talks about. It's the one we hear the most about, but there are a lot of them. DALL-E is an art generator where you can go type in a simple prompt and it will create a piece of art for you. You can go play with it and see what you get, but who owns that and who's the creator of the art and what does that look like? There's all kinds of implications for that. Midjourney is another one I haven't played around with. Volley is another one that generates audio, which is creating a whole other curious line of discussion, because the audio that's getting created is good enough to fool voice detection software or voice detection or human detection. So if it's got enough of a model, it can imitate or replicate human voices to the point where you can't tell if you're on the other end of a phone or if you're leaving a voice message or things like that. All kinds of implications around that. Stable Diffusion is another one, generates art. These are all clickable links. If you go get the slide deck, these are just a few. There's hundreds more, and they're coming out almost daily. But they are worth playing with to surface. What are the questions? what are the questions I should be asking as a professional, as an educator, as an operational expert in how we're going to utilize this for the most benefit. So what is PPS's position? Where are we at right now? So we're going to acknowledge first and foremost right off the bat, this is a brand new field. It's moving very rapidly, and we're not going to have all of the answers. So right now, we have done a couple of things. We have a memo that was just released out to schools with some current district guidelines for the use of AI in our workplace. Things like be real concerned about privacy and security. Don't be putting student information in there. Don't be putting private information or anything that holds that. Be aware of the bias that we just talked about. So that's a link to those general guidelines that just went out today. And then we also have, in still a largely draft form, our position paper on AI in schools. Started that paper myself, and Kimberly Armstrong worked on it, and Dr. Proctor has weighed in with, do we believe our students are going to see more generative AI in their lifetime or less? And if they're going to see more, if the answer to that is they're going to see more, how are we going to make it available to them responsibly? And what do we need to be doing as an institution to teach them and create responsible users of the tools that are available to them? Because it's going to be part of their everyday life and their workforce as we move forward. Also want to address our responsible use policy. And while it wasn't drafted for AI specific, the resources that we have will be deployed and used in a manner that supports our purpose of learning and productivity with equity and inclusive learning and safe and respectful environment. So AI fits into that. We want to make sure that it falls into that use frame, that use case. And then there's a link to our acceptable use policy for students, what they should and shouldn't be doing using the technology that PPS makes available for them. PPS, we want to learn about and how to embrace the tools. Google Workspace for EDU, our email, you've seen the autofill there, it's helping that. It's already being deployed there. Their generative model, Duet, or what you saw me use as Bard, Duet is a paid-for model. It's not deployed in our workspace environment. We have lots of questions about that. We don't know what their model is right now. And it's a paid-for, a monthly per user cost that we haven't budgeted for. So we're not rushing to deploy that because we don't know what are they doing. Are they combing our entire Google Drive, our entire workspace ecosystem? There's some answers we want to make sure are available before we start entering into those. But some of the things they have deployed, generative autofill for things like that, spell checking, things like that. Snap and Read is a tool that we use. It's a reading and writing tool that all of our students and staff have access to. It should be available on everybody's ClassLink, My PPS login. Canva is an image creation, and it's a creation tool, which is also available in ClassLink for all PPS staff and students. It also has the ability to generate an image on a creation there just by typing in what you want to see there and tweaking that. So we do have some things going on. Right now, we're not blocking ChatGPT from anybody being able to access it in our district. With the advent, Google has released their safe apps where students under the age of 13 can only access applications with their Google account if the district has approved it. So we haven't approved ChatGPT for our students under 13 to be able to create an account there, but it's not going to block them from getting there. We feel like that's an equity issue. We know students, part of the equity issue is those students that rely on our device may not have access to another device anywhere else and may not be able to explore this. So while we're not encouraging them to violate the terms of service if they're not over 18, we know kids explore, and there are other tools out there that we want to make sure that they have access to. So we don't block it on the PPS network. We're asking that people or adults in the system log in with a personal email account right now. That may change in the future. That may be something where we encourage people to use their staff accounts. But right now, as we're so early into this, the use of a personal email account helps differentiate between your PPS account and your personal use, should slow down the accidental copying and pasting of large sets of PPS data into a model like this, or get people to think about it. So that is one of the things we're asking. Doesn't mean you can't get there with your PPS account. So what does this mean? AI is everywhere. What's it mean in education and the workforce? So a few examples. OpenAI is generating text-based response in multiple language, including code. So coders are now going in and saying, I need a snippet of code for this, and generating images from prompts or modifying an existing image that you can upload. So if you want to tweak the Mona Lisa, you can load a digital version of that up there and ask it to do certain things to it. Google, we've heard, is making search recommendations and auto-captioning audio on web pages through Chrome. And using captioning there. Bard is out as an exploratory, and coming soon to EDU accounts will be as Duet. They're going all in on this, and they're thinking how to extend this. Microsoft is detecting images and describing them, which is a huge boon for people that have visual impairments and have a tough time seeing things on the screen. They can get that feedback. They're making AI tools, which I believe they have purchased OpenAI a little while ago in Bing and in Edge. These tools are coming everywhere. So we're going to have to start figuring out how we're going to put our recommendations and getting some policy around how we do this. So companies are going all in. With that in mind, the second part of our second phase of our whiteboard is what skills might be relevant in our students' futures. If we know AI is going to be out there, how are we going to best equip them to be using AI? What skills are they going to need? Things we need to be considering. So I'm going to move forward and just share a little bit of information of impacts on the job market and what some experts are saying out there. The World Economic Forum in April said over the next 5 years, nearly a quarter of all jobs will change as a result of AI. Digitization and other economic developments like green energy transition and supply chains reshoring, that's all going to be impacted by the use of AI. And what does that mean? What kind of jobs are we helping to plan for our students to enter the job market in? 65% of U.S. executives believe generative AI will have a high or extremely high impact on their organization in the next 3 to 5 years. 60% say they are 1 or 2 years away from implementing their first generative AI solution. And I think PPS falls into that. We're looking at how can we leverage this tool to replace some repetitive tasks with machines so that we can let the humans do the humanistic work of instruction and social work of face-to-face meetings with students. How can we free up our humans' times to get away from some of the mundane to get into some of the more personal, which machines will never be able to do. 6 in 10, so 60% of Americans believes AI will have a major impact on workers, but only 28% believe it will have a major impact on them personally. So it's going to happen to everybody else, but not to them. And I think we're already seeing it's already having a huge impact on all of us on a daily basis, whether it's just passively, you're seeing it, but I know I'm taking a lot of those suggestions for autocorrection, and my inbox gets filtered by Google's AI on this is an important email based on the previous patterns of reading that see me do. 66% of Americans say they would not want a job. They would not want to apply to a job if AI were used to help making the hiring decision. And I think I fall into that 66%. I don't know how you feel, whether we want AI to do that. There's bias in the algorithms. There always will be. But this is where we're at. This is going to continue to come at us. So how are we going to how do we get there? How do we move forward? And this is a slide put together in infographic from the Wall Street Journal that talks about low exposure versus high exposure. Where are we likely to feel the impacts of AI in our job markets, and who's most likely to be impacted by this? So in blue are the low exposure jobs, likely to have a lesser amount of impact. Low wage jobs, manufacturing jobs, agriculture, mining, science skills, critical thinking skills, jobs requiring many hours of on-the-job training. Where there's high exposure, which have a greater impact potential, high wages. CEOs are thinking, how can I capture some of that money back if I can implement a technology to do that? Writing, programming, information processing, on-the-job training, jobs that require minimal on-the-job training, routine or repetitive work that requires college degree or higher. And I'm curious to see how that's going to impact things, because even before this explosion, we had seen a decline in students directly attending those four-year high schools and seeking degrees, and a lessening of some workforce areas of requiring college degrees. What will this have an impact on? Can I get the information that I need? Can I get the skills training that I need from some of these engines? But how will we respond? What will be our response in trying to prepare our students for this world that they're going to inherit? It's an interesting question. So, all right, we've got about 20 minutes left, and I don't have 20 minutes of talking at you other than want to share a few resources. So this page are a collection of articles that have been gathered. The ones that resonated most for me are the ones I've bolded. The one pager on ChatGPT, it gives some very interesting information in a very succinct, easy to digest. Might be useful for community members, family members, people that want just a quick hit. The Experimenting with AI in the Classroom comes out of Harvard, talks about ways in which we can experiment with it. And how do we do this responsibly with our students without creating overbearing fear? How do we do this productively? And then ISTE has created an incredible website about AI in education and how we're going to use it. The thing that I love most coming out of ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education, is that what we shouldn't be fearing is the replacement of teachers with AI, because that won't happen. The true benefit is where we go all in and create additive models, where we use the artificial intelligence to differentiate for students, to provide individualized course of instruction for all students where it's appropriate, and freeing up the teacher to do what the teacher does, and that's that social interaction and that interpersonal communications, and touching those students where they're at emotionally, as well as in person, to do a full service model, not an either or. We're either people driven or AI driven. It's both. Let's do the full service model, and that's going to have the greatest impacts and the greatest outcomes for our students. So lots to explore here. Again, there's tons coming out every day where you can get more and more information. And then finally, I'm starting to, particularly when I'm presenting to staff here in PPS, collection of links of helpful resources from Otis. First, just our homepage, that's easy enough to find. The Learning Technologies Group, their homepage with all of their updates and information. Put a link in here to our help docs where you can go find how to change a student's password, things like that, how to change your own password, make it real simple. And then also always want to call out our update sites where any communications we've put out, any like the memo that was just made available through Admin Connect today, there will be a link to it in the Otis updates. And then not enough people know about our status site. So all of the critical applications, things like Synergy, PeopleSoft, Canvas, Google Apps, we have a status site that shows their current status, whether they're up or down. So you don't have to necessarily call the support desk to find if something is working or not working. And always, if you need help, there's our phone number, 3375, or send an email to support@pps.net.